Welcome to episode 53 of the POG Show, the Port Orange Government Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Springer, the Public Information Officer for the City of Port Orange. And today I'm joined by our guest, Detective Anthony Tershon of the Port Orange Police Department, as we get ready for the holidays to take a look at some of the fraud trends we're seeing here in our city locally and around Volusia County as well. Detective, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
And we're into the holiday season right now. We've had Black Friday, Cyber Monday come and go. We know people are kind of getting ready for the Christmas holiday season, doing some online shopping. As you're kind of looking at what you're seeing here in Port Orange when it comes to online scams, fraud, what are some of the things you're seeing happen to some of our people here locally within the city and even throughout Volusia County and the country?
Yeah, that's a great topic. The rise that we've seen lately has been from people impersonating. That is a year-round activity, but during the holiday season, we start to see an uptick in people selling fraudulent items and not sending the items, and they're being paid for. Not secure websites. So there's a couple of tips that we'll provide to keep you secure from those incidents, shall we say. The biggest thing also is being aware of any of the marketplace websites, anything that you go meet up. So definitely locations to meet, keep you secure, not going to meet someone at the residence, things like that. So
when you're talking about seeing people misrepresent what they're selling online, whether they're selling a false item, is that happening on those major websites and distributor sites, or are these on smaller venues, or where are you seeing that really occur?
You would find those, so say you're searching through Facebook and you come across an ad and it's going to make you click on another link. That's where you're going to follow that fish trail of just ends up getting to a smaller website, not a lot of backing to it. Be doing that due diligence, making sure you're checking the reviews, make sure there's nothing that's not really blatantly right in front of your face that, hey, and those hairs on the back of your neck, they're going to stand up, so.
Are there certain websites people should avoid using? Or if you go to, let's say, Amazon or Temu, are those mostly secure? Or is there still things you should do when you visit those more well-established sites?
You should always do your due diligence no matter how large the site is. Frauds and scams still can occur. They can't cover it all. It's as large as Amazon is, we still see it happen. There are vendors that will come in and there's going to be bad actors on any platform, shall we say. But the biggest thing is, especially on websites, if you go to a website and you're looking at the website address at the top, you're going to see that HTTP. You want to make sure there's an S at the end of the HTTP, which means that it's a secure website. As far as Amazon goes, always check the seller's, reviews. If they're getting a lot of bad reviews, just take that extra few minutes. That's going to save yourself a headache in the long run.
And I know you mentioned looking at the website links there, the reviews, but when you're shopping online, kind of what are the red flags you look for in particular to see if an item may or may not be worth purchasing through that vendor?
What I've seen in the past is, watch for the spelling of the item, watch for the grammar. There are certain things that'll stick out that may be indicative of somebody that's trying to pass something as a false, fraudulent item. So.
Has that trend really picked up here in Port Orange? Are we seeing a lot of that fraud occur on these online websites and distribution sites, or are we seeing more, as you alluded to earlier, those impersonation fraud? Which one are we seeing more of lately?
It would be more of a domesticated release. We haven't had too many, thankfully, here in Port Orange, but through the trends that I'm seeing across the country, it could make its way through our area, so let's always stay on alert. So.
Okay, but you're seeing also a lot of impersonation frauds too,
Correct.
As well?
Yes.
And how are those schemes working? What are the common ones you're seeing here?
And I'm sure everyone has heard it through either their sister, their mother, their brother, a friend, a family. At some point in time, they were contacted and they were told, hey, you have a warrant for your arrest. You failed to pay a ticket. We're going to need you to come in and either pay a fine. But before we make you come drive somewhere, you know what? Actually, go swing by your bank. Grab some money out of the bank. Swing by a crypto machine and put that on the machine. That'll take care of, wipe your warrant right away. Well, those are 100% fake. I, as a detective, and from my experience, we will never ask you for money to resolve an issue. If you have a warrant, we will come and get you. That's plain and insane. That's as simple as it is. We will never ask to come to your house to get some money, to pay for it. So the biggest thing is being cognizant. The moment that occurs, hang up. If there's a banking institution calling you, let's call the bank that that you've dealt with before. So
when you talk about those impersonation schemes, it seems like 3 to 5 years ago, it was more go to the bank, get physical cash, and transfer it out. Now it seems to be going to cryptocurrency. Why has that switch there occur? What do you think the reasoning behind that is?
So the idea behind cryptocurrency is it is an open platform, open source, and you can view all of the transactions that occur. However, the anonymity behind cryptocurrency is what they're shielding themselves. So they can create all of these, what they call the wallets that you'll see, which is a long alphanumeric character, anywhere from 16 to 32 characters. And those characters are what they shield themselves behind. And they can create hundreds of them with no cost. And the institutions that represent them, which are thousands of companies across the world, most of them may not be domesticated and do not have to follow U.S. law, do not have to provide the ownership of those wallets. So that's where it gets a little tricky for the investigative side of things, which is why I took a very high interest in investigating those. So with my partners throughout the country, and especially locally in Volusia Sheriff's Office, we've teamed up on several instances to track those individuals down, and in some instances seized the money and recovered it for the victims.
Without going too much into your investigative tactics, when you're working in that kind of a case, does it depend on those relationships, as you mentioned, with the other agencies, or kind of what is the mindset that you go into when you want to track down that perpetrator who's done a crime along those lines?
Yeah, it takes a great teamwork to get to someone. It's traditionally never just one. I wouldn't be able to just go out, do the investigation, and go arrest somebody. It's going to be a multitude of individuals and multiple agencies from around the country, because usually these bad actors are not local. They're not going to be the next city over. They're going to be the next state over. They might be on the other side of the country. So it takes a network of individuals to come together to make this prosecution happen.
How far away have you gone to have to make some of these arrests in some cases?
So we've had arrests all the way up in Ohio. We've had arrests out in California. So the unfortunate side is when we start to go international, that's when we run into treaty issues. But that's very few and far between. But some of the countries that we've had to deal with in the past, they do help on handling their side of the investigation, shall we say. But as far as the prosecution and getting those individuals back is a little bit trickier.
And with these cryptocurrency crimes, you're seeing more domestically or internationally kind of being done?
Lately, it has a rise in domesticated cases. International cases may not be as reported, but lately domesticated cases we've seen a massive rise in, and you might have seen it on the news, you might have heard on the radio that these cases are coming more out of the prison system, and it's a very well organized network.
So they're doing it from the prison itself, or how is it kind of being done?
There are individuals that have been able to, by either contraband phones, get phones into their jails and make phone calls from their cells, acting as law enforcement, saying that you have a warrant, and then they'll find themselves being assisted by individuals on the outside. And now this network is very organized, like I said, to whereas there's so many prisons, there's so many inmates, it makes it extremely hard to track down. But the Volusia Sheriff's Office has had some very good luck and
on getting some of the individuals arrested, and
we work with them very well. So,
and just to look at some of the numbers over the last couple of years, what kind of trends are we seeing? How much has this type of crime increased or decreased just from last year to this year? What are we seeing kind of number-wise in terms of crimes of fraud being committed here in Port Orange against individuals through those impersonation schemes?
Yeah. So when I think about the reporting from last year to this year, part of me wants to think that there was an uptick in the crime itself, but the other half is I believe that we've seen a rise in people not feel as embarrassed. And that was kind of the biggest issue, is people just felt embarrassed or didn't want to report it, felt that there's
a stigmatism involved.
Exactly.
You know, you feel that you were taken advantage of, that you're better than that, you're too smart to fall for something like that. So people feel that they could be ostracized or marginalized, especially if they're, somebody who's older, that their family may think, okay, we can't let them have access to their bank accounts anymore because they're not being financially sound with it. So there is that stigmatism with it. So that's probably led to it being underreported over the last couple of years. And there's also been more education also done on your part to let people know about these crimes.
Correct, yeah. So just to kind of give you just a brief snapshot from last year to this year, we had 100 cases last year of economic crime reported. Obviously, in my opinion, that is probably maybe 40% of the actual crime that has occurred. As of 2025 through November, so we still have this month, December, to go, we've had 154 economic crimes reported. Those vary from cryptocurrency frauds, gift card frauds, your PII, your personal identification information was stolen and compromised, online fraud, contractor fraud, and frauds that were initiated through phone calls. The total loss at this point is $1.5 million. So with a third of that being online fraud. So that's usually online fraud usually occurs from your information was compromised at some point in time. It doesn't mean it was compromised last week. It could have been compromised 6 months ago and not utilized till now, shall we say. So with those numbers, last year was a million total. This year through 11 months is 1.5 million. So like I said, I don't believe it's an uptick in crime, shall we say, but I see it's more people have felt the need that they need to report it, which is good, because if you report it, it at least gives the opportunity to investigate, make your bank aware. So keeping your banking institution and law enforcement involved is going to help you no matter what. So,
do you know from the stats you were looking at just now how many arrests we've made associated with that, or even how much of that money we've been able to recover for victims in the past year or so related to those fraudulent crimes?
We do have a pretty good number on return, roughly 1.5. So we've had 343,000 in return on that be recovered. That is obviously, it seems like a pretty low number, but I think that's a pretty good margin. So as I was referring, the cases do get really complex if they're not in-person frauds, right? It's not someone coming to they steal your credit card from the car that was burglarized and used at the local Walmart. We get some good video surveillance, we get some good leads, but some of these crimes where they occur online or over the phone, it just makes it a little bit harder for us to trace, but it doesn't mean we're not going to give everything we got to try to find out for you. About 20 of those cases have been charged or looked into and are still pending. Majority of those cases will turn into what I would say we call agency assists, where we then pass the information on to the FBI and they can further investigate or take the information and hopefully match it to another suspect throughout the country.
Going back to what you touched upon earlier with those safety tips, if you were just kind of going to summarize, what are maybe the 3 or 5 things you should do when you're making these purchases online, or even if you get one of these imposter calls on the phone where you're not sure if it's legit or not, what should you do kind of to help protect yourself from becoming another victim?
Yeah. So the first thing I always tell someone in any instance, whether you're in a hostile situation, take a step back, take a breath, think about it. The moment you think about it, because what they want to do is they will talk to you and lull you in to a sense of, security, right? They'll keep talking. Hey, no, just hang on 1 second. Hang up. Nothing is ever that important, right? If it's a loved one, your loved one, right? But nobody should be able to talk to you nonstop, lull you, and then finally get, that security over you, right? Especially the 55 plus community, we've noticed, if their family's not local, their loved ones unfortunately have passed away, the moment they get on the phone with a friendly voice, and they will spend hours and hours, and they'll just, that's where we want them to just hang up. Step outside, talk to your neighbor, bounce it off them. That moment you bounce that off somebody and they say, nope, that's not real, it's going to click in your like a light bulb, right? So being cognizant, taking a step back, taking a breath, don't give any information, Even when you answer the phone and you use keywords, yes, no, those keywords can be recorded. So don't even really give an opportunity to an individual when they ask, hey, is this so-and-so? Or, nope. If you don't recognize the number, it's important, they'll leave a voicemail. If you don't recognize the voicemail, there's no reason to call back to it. The big thing about the warrant scams and the ticket scams, like I was saying, is just be cognizant that we're not going to call you. We're not going to really give you a heads up. We're going to come arrest you if you got a warrant. The ticket scams, federal governments always still use mail. Mail is always the way to go. We do get a lot of, unfortunately, junk mail, if you've all seen, but you'll get a summons or a court date in the mail. We don't call people for, missing court or a ticket, not paid a ticket, So, as far as the secure websites, pay attention to websites as always.
And let's say you click on the link by mistake or you end up transferring the money. What do I do at that point where I've realized, okay, I have just transferred money over to a bad actor or somebody that may not be who I thought it was? What steps should I take at that point? Do I call my bank? Do I call the police department? How do I kind of take it from there if you have been compromised?
Yeah, the first thing I tell you to do is call your bank, because we're not going to make things instantaneously happen as far as getting money back. So the bank is going to be your first stop. Get your card just turned off or suspended, depending on what the status of the case is. If your card was stolen, you're going to need a new card anyways. If you provided a card number, you're going to need a card anyways. So getting those replaced immediately would be your main first goal, shall we say. Then call law enforcement to make the report. Some banking institutions like a report first. I would tell you to, because we can make the report, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen instantaneous. So they want a report number, right? A documented event. So you could call us, get that ball rolling, especially if you're at home, you got your husband, your wife, your significant other, get them to kind of simultaneously, right? So one of you calls the bank, one of you calls the law enforcement. So
is there any advantage of, if you do make that questionable purchase, doing it on a credit card versus a debit card, or is one more secure than the other? Are they both kind of at the same risk threshold?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. So the credit cards and debit cards, so a debit card ties directly to your bank account, where a credit card is tied to a financial institution. So in my opinion, in my education throughout investigating frauds for several years, credit card would be the way to use and spend your money. So if you go out and you use a credit card at a local institution and that credit card is compromised, well, that's the credit from the financial institution, not your actual bank account, that your debit account that you receive your payroll checks into, So if that money gets compromised, it may become a little bit more trickier for your banking institution. So my suggestion is always use a credit card, pay the credit card off with your debit card. And the big thing is to kind of follow up with that. When your credit card is if it's ever stolen or compromised, be aware that you also need to change the information on your auto pay. So if you have a tap pay on your cell phone, you want to make sure you call your bank and notify them about that as well. And what they call that is a token. So every card on your phone has a token associated with your cell phone. So when you tap pay, it'll give you that token to allow the bank to charge through your tap on your Android or your Apple device. So once that's completed, and if the credit card's ever stolen, all that person does is sit back and wait for you to change your credit card number. If you do not let your banking institution know that that has happened, they don't know anything. They don't automatically do it. So that bad actor, that criminal, is just going to keep getting the updated information as you update your card. So you have to specifically say, hey, I need to update the token associated with my credit card on my phone.
So keeping those financial institutions in the loop is critical,
100%.
Working with law enforcement the best you can. And you mentioned those numbers. I know sometimes we've seen where you can kind of spoof those numbers to make it look like it's coming from your actual bank or institution. But would you suggest if you get that call and it sounds a little bit suspicious, is it better to hang up and then maybe actually call that institution to verify that they are calling you about that, or what steps should you take at that point?
Great point. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is they will never have you call the same number back. They will have you call a different number. So if you received a call from the county clerk court here in Volusia County and they tell you to call back a different number or send you a message from a different number, that should be a red flag, right? So hang up, look up the Volusia County clerk of the court, and you will see their phone number, and then you call that number. And I can tell you right now, you will not get the same person that was impersonating, that number. So.
And Detective, I know we talked a little bit about cyber and online crime here, but for people who are going to the box stores, doing that shopping at malls and outlets, what are some safety things they should do when they're out, in the parking lot or even in the store shopping? What are some things they should be aware of and looking out for?
Yeah. So if you've heard of RFID, which is what your credit cards have all kind of evolved to, where you can just tap your card. Well, as you can understand, if it's easy to tap your phone or your card to a transaction device on the counter at your store, it's just as easy for someone to stand within a foot of you and do the exact same thing. So having your wallet, your phone secure. Now the phones are more secure than just the standalone hard card, right? Because on most of the devices, you have to either double click the side of the button, you have to show your face, type in a code. Whereas the card itself is just a free card. And if it's just kind of standing on the counter, you're holding your hand close to your purse, all they do is they'll stand with a device right next to you, and it can just scan that card and accept whatever amount that they want to plug in.
So you're using the phone app on your card app on your phone better than the card itself. Physical cash, I'm sure, is probably the best option if you can do it that way as well.
Traditionally, yeah. Physical cash has always been the safest method, shall we say? I would use your tap pay. I personally don't even carry a credit card or cash with me anymore. It's all tap pay. Usually my wife will have the cash or the card with her. So.
All right. Anything else, Detective, you want people to know, or any tips you want to give them as we head further into this holiday season, just to be aware of the different scams that are out there?
No, I think we got a pretty good gist on it. It's just take that moment, right? Take a second, take a breath, ask yourself that question. If someone came to me with what is happening, what would I say to them, right? You put yourself in someone else's shoes, that realistic thought's going to come into your brain and go, yeah, this is not real. This is fake. This is fraud. I should probably do this another way. So,
Detective, thank you. And Mick, take us on out.